Welcome to this very, very special interview edition with Alex Lewczuk. He's the founder of Siren Radio. And today we're going to spotlight the urgent situation facing Siren Radio at the University of Lincoln. So join us now as we discuss the challenges and controversy around the decision to replace Siren Radio. With Alex's deep connection into Siren Radio and his extensive broadcasting experience, our interview today will hopefully shed some light on the fight to save this cherished community station. Conversations that unlock perspectives and ignite change. Only on Conversations with Bridgetti. Don't go away. We'll be right back. If you've just joined us, then welcome to the conversation with myself, Bridgetti LAMDA. My guest today is Alex Lewczuk. He is a respected figure in both broadcasting and academia, and known for the founding Siren Radio and also Southside broadcasting. He's dedicated to excellence in teaching and learning with degrees in chemistry, biology, and film and television studies at the University of Lincoln. His diverse background enriches his approach to media education. He's passionate about empowering students and fostering innovation, and he's the driving force for positive change in media education and community radio. So again, he founded Siren Radio and Southside Broadcasting. So let's dive into this conversation and welcome him to the studio, shall we? Alex, thanks for joining me in the studio. Great honor to have you here as we're on opposite sides of the world. And hopefully we can shed some light on what's happening with Siren Radio. So I'm going to dive right in. Could you share your perspective on the importance of Siren Radio to the university community and also its role in providing an opportunity for students in audio production and broadcasting?
Well, firstly, Bridgetti, thank you very much for inviting me onto your program. It's a delight to be here and certainly appreciate the opportunity. If we go back to the last century, 1997, and we look at the origins of Siren Radio, which actually is an acronym which stands for Scholars in Radio Entertainment. It was certainly our intention at the time to develop a format of broadcasting which was not commercial. It was certainly public service broadcasting, but it was also designed to have the pace and professionalism of mainstream radio, but also with a range of topics, a range of areas that can be explored, literally everything from weekly author features right the way through to sports-based broadcasting, onwards to a variety of other informed, intelligent aspects. Because we always felt at the time, very much in keeping with the government's view, at least the government in the UK, that the essence of the 1990 Broadcasting Act was to actually enable new voices to actually enter the radio medium, voices that hitherto had not necessarily had the opportunity to have the chance to broadcast live on the medium of radio and so on. And so we started off beginning to do a series of test transmissions, or as they're referred to in Britain, restricted service licenses from 1997 through the shift of the university from its location in Hull to the University of Lincoln, and effectively were granted in 2006 a full-time license from Ofcom, which is the regulatory body in the UK for all official broadcasting, to effectively start transmitting as a full-time Ofcom radio service. We, in essence, have had that since 2007, and we were also the first English university to actually be granted the license to broadcast as a full-time radio station. There had been campus radio stations. I've been involved with a couple of them. There had been various local community stations, but this was very much the first chance of using the best of higher education, hence our strapline from the University of Lincoln to the world, with a whole range of other elements designed to, as I say, keep to that concept of scholars in radio entertainment. And in essence, since then, we've picked up over 10 awards. The Edward R. Murrow Award, of course, Edward R. Murrow, one of the most prestigious United States broadcasters of obviously the 20th century. We've had the accolades of being East Midlands Radio Station of the Year, and things have been developing very positively with respect to that, until, of course, we had a scenario this year when the current management of the university elected to rescind the Ofcom license and to effectively self-terminate a license which was still good until 2027. Now, clearly, not only myself, but a number of other folk were, I think, shocked is an understatement, but amazed at the decision to actually do that, especially given the lack of consultation, the lack of awareness of what was being developed with respect to that. And that really is one of the reasons why, in essence, I'm talking about it here and sharing the concern that we actually have, because clearly, if I look at it from my academic perspective, this seems to be very much an attack on democracy. And I know that sounds very dramatic, because at the end of the day, we're talking about a radio service here, which also podcasts, which also has a number of other platform bases that share the word across the globe. But it's also something which genuinely, I think, if allowed to proceed, has very worrying consequences or potential consequences for even the licensing aspect of the body called Ofcom, etc. So I think there are a number of issues that are at work here that really we're trying to address. We're engaging in conversation, to tap into the title of this particular production, but also to actually say, what is the thought behind this? Because frankly, with over 30 years of broadcasting experience, I can't understand the decision at all.
Wow, that is quite hectic. I mean, it's shocking that this would have taken place without any consultation, at the very least. So far, what steps have been taken to advocate for the retention of Siren Radio, both internally with the senior management team and possibly other relevant stakeholders?
Well, as you might well be aware, we clearly did want to address this on an internal basis, and we offered, and by we, I'm referring to the management team of Siren Radio, and indeed acting as an advocate for many of our students. Many of our students, of course, in both the first and second years, came to the university specifically because of the opportunities advertised in the university's own literature of being able to have access to a fully licensed Ofcom radio station. Clearly, they are bitterly disappointed with respect to the decision that seems to be in place to actually have terminated that license. So we've raised a number of issues with respect to that. And of course, clearly, we've also had features within the national press. It's certainly raised the profile with respect to writers and columnists who've also raised the issue, and indeed compared us to the scenario back in the 1960s with pirate radio. Of course, that's not quite true, because we're not an illegal broadcasting organization. We've always been legal. We've always very much addressed the key thing. And this, again, is one of the staggering decisions to actually self-terminate, especially when in an era where we clearly, in higher education across the globe, are faced with a cost of living crisis. There might well be a case of, well, do we really need to afford to carry a radio service, etc.? The actual costs are minimal. And in fact, we have been informed by the people who took the decision that it was not a financial decision. So again, another bizarre scenario in terms of, so it's not about the pounds and pence or the financial side of things. So what is it about then? given that literally 10 months ago, we actually have on record one of the key members behind this actually stating that Siren Radio is a huge asset to the university. As I actually asked at a public meeting, what has happened in the last 10 months or so to have a 180 turn on that, to suddenly say, oh no, we're going to scrap it and we're going to replace it with the Sound of the Future. The Sound of the Future is a project that currently seems to be in the process of development, that we've heard a number of things about, which has not invited any of the Siren stakeholders to be part of the actual process, and seems to be actually offering everything that Siren already offers, with the exception, of course, of not having an FM license. So once again, on a number of areas, we're thinking, but this makes no sense whatsoever. And I've obviously been in the educational game to appreciate that there are an awful lot of strange, contradictory terms that one gets as a matter of course. We refer to it as cognitive dissonance, where you say one thing and effectively you mean something completely different. But in this particular instance, it just seems to be, well, bizarre is the kindest word I can actually say at this particular time.
Shocking is, I think, an understatement. Just listening to you. Have you been given the opportunity to make any proposals or offer strategies to maintain Siren Radio's presence in its continued format?
There has
or
been
its present format?
There has been an online poll which the university established, which we have not seen the results of, but I do know that the consistent response that was being given was every question, the response was, well, Siren Radio is already doing this. Again, in terms of the, and I'll put in inverted commas, consultation after the fact, we have been promised we would be contacted shortly after the decision, which was made back in, obviously, January the 30th, to actually have the opportunity to express our views. That has not manifested at all. And indeed, again, if this was the sort of aspect which perhaps we'd heard from the Eastern European government of East Germany back when the Stasi were in operation, or indeed other totalitarian governments, one might have said, okay, fine, we know where we're coming from here. But in an education which purports to actually have a civic duty, a civic mission, a commitment not only to the citizens of Lincoln in England, but also Lincolnshire, the county, and indeed globally to its students, to actually adopt this particular approach seems frankly astounding. And again, that's the key question. In many ways, I've gone on record of several interviews that I've given previously to members of the press that, we are not a radical, aggressive group of individuals. We are willing to engage in dialogue. Everybody, the very nature of the media is, obviously we have different views, there are different perspectives. But actually, if you're not willing to actually even listen to those particular perspectives, if you're actively being ignored or indeed censored from that particular perspective, then clearly there are major issues there which are quite worrying from the perspective of not only academic freedom, but obviously broadcasting freedom as well.
It definitely does sound that way, that, in some way or some covert way, they're trying to silence your voice, as it were. Is it possibly a matter of an adaptation of technologies in broadcasting or digital media landscape that needs to be made that you are not aware of?
And this is a really interesting point, because clearly one of the key aspects of Siren Radio, and one of the elements that we've engaged with actively in terms of future-proofing, is to deal with things such as online platforms, to deal with facilities such as Listen Again, to actually have a window to actually access podcasts of the program. We know this is the case. We are in regular contact with media professionals globally who regularly come up with the line that linear drives to digital. It's not the reverse. It's not a case of people listen to podcasts and then suddenly actually move back to linear. You have that natural flow in which, as the history of mass media has demonstrated over the last 150 years, the papers have not gone out of business just because radio came on the scene. Cinema didn't go out of business because television arrived, you've had a complementarity, which is very much the way in which new media develops. And the very program that we're engaging with today is a classic example of how new media can, handled appropriately, handled suitably, sensitively, and professionally, can actually provide another wonderful opportunity to develop and engage in that. That's never been an issue with respect to Siren Radio. It was designed to obviously evolve with the times and continue with it within that process, but not to literally have its effective licensing removed for reasons other than financial impropriety, for which we're certainly not capable of it or guilty of in any way, shape, or form, or any of the other elements which result in a license being terminated, such as obviously being in breach of broadcasting codes, impartiality, all of those areas.
Are there any measures in place to ensure transparency and open communication with the university in future collaborations? Because, what is happening is very concerning.
Well, we do know, and we have actually are aware that not only has the Bishop of Lincoln, but also the local MP, the local Member of Parliament, have written urgently requesting that a decision is reversed here. This still provides actually the senior management within the university with an opportunity to actually change their minds gracefully. This is something which, again, we're very keen to actually say, look, there is still a possibility from a public relations perspective to say, we have seen the online petition, we've seen the thousands of people who've already signed, we've seen the thousands of comments that have actually come through in terms of how they relate to Siren Radio, how it means something to them. It's no surprise that certainly the station manager, Ryan Jones, and myself had not only students, but also members of the public in Lincoln who'd been part of Siren Radio literally in tears when this decision was made. So again, from that particular perspective, this has upset a large number of people. And the reason I'm here today is because, in all honesty, I couldn't look my graduates or my undergraduates in the face, with all honesty, if I didn't say, look, sometimes with democracy and the media, you have to be prepared to actually stand up when decisions are made which are so palpably, totally, incontrovertibly, bizarre and wrong for this particular project and so on.
Has there been any engagement with your alumni, industry professionals, and the community to garner some support from them? Could pressure from your alumni, for example, help your cause?
That's certainly something which I do know of many alumni who have are currently employed with the mainstream media, both BBC, Sky, digital media, and so on, who have been very vocal and very articulate in their correspondence. And to be honest, Bridgetti, it's actually made me feel very proud to actually see students from 5, 10, 15 years ago who actually have not only recognized the assistance and the help that it's provided themselves in their own career, whether that be in commentating, whether that be in sports broadcasting, whether it be in their own particular podcast-based things, or indeed in terms of working for the national and international media, how essential this interface at a university level, where it's a case of there is the opportunity to develop new ideas, new concepts. We do not have to effectively raise the sponsorship capital that's there. That's not saying we wouldn't consider that. There are always options to consider ways in which, if it is a funding issue, we can look at ways to address that. Put quite simply, the costs that Siren Radio actually entail, roughly with licenses, amounts to about £18,000 a year. That's the equivalent to £1 per student per year. That's not a great deal in terms of actually keeping for all of the assets, all the advantages that come across within that. But of course, we've been informed in one of our rare, I won't say conversations, but discussions or encounters, that it's not about the finance, it's about the future of broadcasting. As you can appreciate, I find that difficult to really relate to.
I'm sure, I'm finding what I'm hearing really, really hard to believe. Are there specific moments in the history of Siren Radio that you are particularly proud of, that would make a good case for maintaining it in its current format?
Well, I think the fact that we've had Academy Award-winning actors who've been part of the program, Shirley Jones, of course, being one of those examples, the fact that we have regular weekly links with respect to Los Angeles and New York, the fact that we carry a weekly Author of the Week feature that features not only established authors, but also up-and-coming authors from across the globe with us, the fact that we have regular connections with Australia with respect to our film review programs, the fact that we actually have an outreach program that connects India, Romania, a variety of other countries. The fact that we had one Romanian student who, again, postgraduate student in the business school, who was, again, completely emotionally overwhelmed by the fact that her parents could listen to her live via the streaming service, via Siren Radio. The fact that, again, it gives the opportunity for, in the words of E.M. Forster, only connect. That's one of the real strengths of radio. It enables people to connect, whether it's streamed, whether it's via an FM system, however the system actually works, it enables us to actually make those connections. And I think actually collectively, all those areas, but even recently being invited to effectively do sports commentary for some of our local footballing sides, etc., being, getting the opportunity with respect to our undergraduates and our sports journalists to actually develop their skills. And really from that pastoral side of things, the way in which it enables our undergraduates to connect with the local communities, to actually connect with the wider communities. Universities don't exist in isolation. They never have, actually. But in essence, the whole point of a university is to be producing knowledge, to be curators of knowledge, to hopefully be sharing that knowledge and providing an opportunity, in this particular case via the medium of radio, with a wider audience. So whether you're dealing with currently the festival of Eid, whether you're dealing with Ramadan, whether you're dealing with Christian festivals, whether you're dealing with religious discussion and debates. I've just literally completed a program with the local new theatre Royal Lincoln because they do a feature called Royal Radio, again, a monthly program which focuses on their particular activities and so on. Now, we can provide a full hour-long program which focuses on that. Other local stations, which are under an awful lot of pressure, etc., they'd be lucky if they got 4 or 5 minutes. And I think that's the area where we can provide that opportunity. I hesitate to use the word platform because I think that can often be mishandled in all sorts of ways, but it provides an opportunity for people to engage in not only the arts, but also the creative cultural aspects that ultimately fundamentally make us human.
Wow, you seem to tick all the boxes for me.
Well,
and I can only say that this would be one massive loss of opportunity for your students moving forward. Just the opportunities you've created for them is massive for their careers and having their voices heard. It absolutely makes no sense to me. If this is not a financial consideration, none of this makes sense to me as to why they would even consider shutting down Siren Radio. If you had to make a passionate plea or a message that you want to give to students, to staff, to volunteers, anyone who is passionate about preserving Siren Radio and ensuring its continued success as the valued resource that it currently is for the university, what would you want to say? What would you want them to know?
One of the most poignant statements for reasons for supporting Siren Radio on our online petition, which I thought was really quite poignant and pertinent, was literally reasons for supporting Siren Radio. And the answer was because my son goes to the University of Lincoln. And in just a few words, that was just so significant in terms of somebody who'd made the choice. And obviously the parent was key to obviously promote that. It's a very important, very significant, as you rightly said, I think, resource that many of us possibly didn't realize until we actually saw the sheer outpouring of not just emotion, but also outpouring of righteous annoyance when this came through in terms of how we were seeing the whole the development of this particular project. And I think it's important to say, if it goes, we can't just start it up again overnight. This the kind of special elements that we've got in terms of Siren Radio are something which, as I said, we started back in 1997. That was on the back of my own experience with respect to Cambridge University Radio. It takes time to develop these things, as with all particular media forms, to basically just literally press the self-destruct button. And I do emphasize the self-destruct button seems to be, at best, an extraordinarily myopic thing to actually do. And I think, in essence, look, in education, in academia, mistakes do occur. Research programs can go awry. Sometimes the road to Hades is paved with good intentions. We want to ensure that at the heart of Siren is that communications area. And we would certainly wish to ensure that the people, and I'm not naming them because they don't need to be right to have right to reply. People who might be listening to this will know the people that are involved with this particular decision. They need to take a real step to actually ask themselves the question, which I think is a healthy sign in any case. And Lord knows, I say this every time we do a radio program. Is this the best way forward? Is this the only way forward? Could it possibly be that I'm making a mistake? Politicians, bless them, have to do U-turns. People do have to change this thing. These things, the whole essence of being human is that we can have discussion, we can have debate. But if you shut that down, if you take that ability to discuss cogently, rationally, sensibly, and in a civilized manner, you take that away, then you're losing not something which is just a radio station, but you're losing the very essence of democracy.
Well, that about sums it up very, very well. I'm speechless. I'm absolutely speechless at what is happening to Siren Radio, and I really hope that somehow things may change. Are you? Have you lost all hope, or is this hopeless? Is there something that we can do?
Bridgetti, I don't think I'd be having this conversation if I'd lost all hope. I think a mixture of Irish and Polish blood in me has always demonstrated the fact that we need to sometimes challenge situations that appear to be hopeless, because nothing actually ever is hopeless. I mean, who knows what can actually happen and develop. So I think again, I do appreciate the opportunity that you've provided us today with, and I speak on behalf, obviously, not just of myself, but on a whole range of folk. There are probably, I was doing a recent calculation, since this thing broke, I've spoken to probably 500 or 600 people, professionals from right across the industry, and fellow academics and folk in different universities across the land in this country and beyond. Not a single person has said this is a good idea. Now, for me, this is not just a kind of, well, it's 52% for and 48% against. This is by far 98, 99% who are saying, this is madness. This is wrong. Stop it now. And so whilst we're still waiting with respect to that, we're still broadcasting on FM. The official line is we're still continuing from that perspective. We are still obviously hopeful that things will develop, and that kind of special and the tremendous energy that's being poured out in terms of this. I mean, there is a part of me, one teeny tiny regret. I'm very disappointed that the university has, or in certain instances, forced us into using the energy to save a radio station where we could have been using that energy to actually further enhance and develop and further promote the radio service. And that's something which I find very irritating.
Alex, thank you so much for making such a passionate plea and a case for keeping Siren Radio going. And, my hope is that somehow Siren Radio will be saved. I think it would be a real pity for the university, a huge loss for its students. And as you say, I just want to repeat that it's not something you switch off and you can suddenly restart in 5 minutes. That's not how things work. So my hope is really that somehow this can be turned around, that they'll have a change of heart and realize what a huge loss it'd be for the university. So thank you for joining me today, and thank you for making such a passionate case for why Siren Radio should continue. So to our audience, I want to say thank you very much for joining us on the conversation. Join us next time again for another captivating discussion and conversation with thought leaders and change leaders, brought to you by BeLive Media. So until next time, it's goodbye for now. And thank you again, Alex.
Thank you.